Many knitted cables look something like these, but there's a wonderful variation that forms knitted braids like this, and knitting braided cables or cabled braids is our focus in this video. It's a lot easier than you might think. If you've never knit a cable before, you might want to try a simpler cable first, but braided cables are really made up of a series of very simple cables, often 2/2, which is what we're doing here. Now, in this row of this braid, we are doing 2/2, and these are right leaning, so the first 2 stitches go onto the cable needle and they go to the back, and then I'm going to knit 2. Now I take the 2 stitches that are on the cable needle and I put them back on the left needle and I knit them. Trying to keep my cable needle out of your way visually. Now, what is distinctive about this kind of cabling is that there's no spacer stitch. There is no plain purl in between here. So I go immediately to the next 2/2 cable. And to make these braids, you usually are on any given row, you are cabling in the same direction. So if the first one was a right-leaning cable, the second one's going to be a right-leaning cable. And they are also always, well, always is such a dangerous word, but they are most often the same number of stitches. So 2 stitches over 2 stitches, if that's what you start the row with, it's probably what you're going to do for each of these braids. So here's another 2/2 right-leaning cable, again with no spacer stitch in between. And it's the absence of spacer stitches that help to give the braided cable its distinctive look. So there we've done 3 different crossings, each of 2 stitches over 2 and all right leaning. So now we come to another braid. This braid is actually the same as the one we just did, except we're on a different row in the 4-row pattern sequence. And in this braid, on this row, we're going to be cabling to the left. And because we don't want to make honeycombs, we're going to knit 2 stitches plain. They are uncabled. And the next 4 stitches are going to be cabled, and these are left leaning. So the first 2 stitches on the cable needle go to the front. I knit 2, and now the 2 that are on the cable needle go back, and I knit those, and I do that again. Knit 2 from the left needle. Now knit the 2 that were on the cable needle, and there are 2 stitches remaining, and they don't have 2 other stitches that are in this braid, so those get knit in an ordinary way. When you knit braided cables, you usually cross on every right side row if you are knitting flat like this, and if you are knitting in the round, you would be cabling or crossing on every right side row. Now this braid, while very similar in appearance to these other 2, is ever so slightly different. This has 14 stitches instead of 12 stitches, and that means that there are 7 pairs of stitches, and that's an odd number. So in this kind of braid, you are always going to have two stitches that on one end or the other, and that will alternate, that are going to be left plain. But we start this one the same as we did the first. The first 4 stitches are cabled 2/2 and right leaning. And you will have a chart often when you're working a braid like this, but you can also look at your knitting. I'll do that after I finish these stitches. this has a very woven look to it, and the cabling done immediately before this went to the left, and that tells you that this time you're going to go toward the right instead. Otherwise, you would get a different effect. It can be just as beautiful, but it is going to give you a different effect. So you will find it helpful perhaps to learn to read your knitting when you're doing things like this. We're showing only the right sides in this video, the right side of the work, and what you would do on this side. Often in cabling braids like this, you, on the wrong side or the alternate rounds, if you're going in the round, you just knit the knits and purl the purls. You don't do anything special. This is an effect that you normally do every other round. Now, remember I said that there were 14 stitches and that on alternate rows you will have 2 stitches on this side that are left just to knit even, and 2 stitches on this side that will just be knit even. And on this round, they are the 2 stitches on this side. Like many other kinds of cables, braids can affect your gauge a lot. So please do a swatch and measure carefully so that you're not disappointed in the fit of your resulting garment. Also, I urge you to check your work after every row like this. Does it still look woven? If I had made a mistake in the way I crossed my cables, I would see it right away. It's so much easier to see and correct now than to fix later. You can fix it, but it's a mess. Also, braids like this stand out even better when they're set against a plain background. In this case, it's reverse stockinette. And you really want to think about that if you're doing your own designs. If you're going to this amount of work, you want it to show. You want these braids to stand out because you're a super knitter when you can do things like this. For information about Denise interchangeable products for knitting and crochet, go to knitdenise.com.